I watched a CEO lose his $50 million company because he couldn't let go of a $200 decision. Sound crazy? This microscopic moment of control addiction reveals something terrifying about what you're unknowingly doing right now. Control sneaks into your life like an unwelcome houseguest who never leaves. It shows up when you rearrange your friend's messy desk without asking, when you hover over your partner's shoulder while they're cooking dinner, when you feel that familiar tightness in your chest because someone else is driving and they're not taking the route you would have chosen. But what exactly is control? Simply put, it's your attempt to force things, people, or situations to go exactly the way you want them to. It's the invisible hand you use to push life into the shape that feels safest to you. Control has many faces, and it's surprisingly good at disguise. At home, it might look like insisting the dishwasher gets loaded your specific way. At school, it could be that student who dominates every group project because nobody else does it right. In the workplace, it's the manager who needs to approve every email before it goes out, even the ones about lunch orders. The weird part is that most controlling behavior doesn't come from a place of meanness. It comes from fear. Fear of mess, fear of mistakes, fear of things going sideways in ways you can't predict or fix. Your brain, trying to be helpful, whispers, "If I can just control this one thing, I'll feel better." Makes sense, right? After all, some control is actually necessary. You control your alarm clock so you wake up on time. You control your budget so you don't end up eating ramen for 3 weeks straight. You follow traffic rules because controlled driving keeps everyone alive. These kinds of control create structure and safety in a world that can feel chaotic. Then there's the other kind of control, the kind that grips so tight it starts choking the life out of everything around it. This is where things get messy, and not in the good way. Here's what many people don't realize. The urge to control usually comes from wanting to avoid risk or surprise. Your mind treats uncertainty like a threat. It doesn't matter if the uncertainty is about something small like which restaurant to go to, or something big, like whether your teenager will make good choices at a party. The feeling is the same. That uncomfortable sensation that something might happen that you can't handle. But control is sneaky. It promises relief from anxiety, then delivers more of it. It's like scratching a mosquito bite, feels good for a second, then makes everything worse. Let's not forget how control shows up in the smallest moments. You find yourself refolding towels that someone else already folded because they're not quite right. You interrupt people mid-sentence to correct minor details that don't actually matter. You feel genuine stress when plans change, even when the new plan is objectively better. Well, here's where it gets interesting. Control often wears the mask of being helpful or caring. The parent who packs their adult child's suitcase for them isn't necessarily trying to be overbearing. They might genuinely believe they're showing love. The friend who always chooses the restaurant might think they're being decisive and saving everyone the hassle of deciding. And the weird part is, sometimes controlling people are really good at what they do. They're organized, they get things done, they remember details others forget. This makes it harder to recognize when helpful control crosses the line into harmful control. The line gets crossed when your need to control starts making things worse instead of better, when people around you start walking on eggshells, when you spend more energy trying to manage outcomes than actually enjoying experiences, when the thought of letting someone else take charge makes you feel genuinely panicked. Control becomes toxic when it stops being about making things better and starts being about managing your own discomfort with uncertainty. That's when you're not really controlling external situations anymore. You're trying to control your internal emotional state by controlling everything around you. But why does this matter? Because too much control doesn't just affect you, it ripples out and touches everyone in your orbit. Your stress becomes their stress. Your need for certainty becomes their constraint. Your fear of things going wrong becomes their fear of disappointing you. The people closest to controlling individuals often develop their own coping strategies. They might stop sharing information to avoid micromanagement. They might start hiding their true preferences to avoid conflict. They might even begin to doubt their own judgment because they're so used to someone else making decisions for them. Control, when it goes too far, doesn't actually create the safety and predictability it promises. Instead, it creates a different kind of chaos. The kind where relationships suffer, creativity dies, and everyone involved feels exhausted from trying to meet impossible standards. The question becomes, if control can make things worse instead of better, why do so many people struggle with it? The answer lies deeper than simple habit or personality. It goes straight to the heart of human psychology and the stories we tell ourselves about safety. Ever wonder why some people need to plan every detail of a vacation, while others just throw clothes in a bag and go? The difference often boils down to fear. Fear drives most controlling behavior, even when we don't realize it. Fear of the unknown, fear of making mistakes, fear of looking foolish or getting hurt. When life feels unpredictable, grabbing control feels like putting on armor. Uncertainty scares us more than almost anything else. Our brains are prediction machines, constantly trying to figure out what happens next. When we can't predict something, alarm bells start ringing. The coffee shop might run out of your favorite drink. Your boss might give you extra work on Friday. Your friend might cancel dinner plans. These small uncertainties pile up like snow until they create an avalanche of anxiety. Then there's trauma. Past experiences shape how we handle today's challenges. Someone who grew up with alcoholic parents might obsessively check their partner's mood every morning. A person who got fired without warning might micromanage their team to avoid surprises. Trauma teaches us that bad things happen when we're not watching carefully enough, so we watch everything. But here's the weird part. Controlling behavior often starts in childhood, not with dramatic trauma, but with everyday chaos. Maybe your parents fought constantly, and you never knew which mood would greet you at dinner. Perhaps money was always tight and plans changed without notice. Kids who grow up in unpredictable homes often become adults who color-code their calendars and plan meals 3 weeks ahead. Anxiety feeds on itself like a hungry monster. The more anxious you feel, the more you try to control. The more you try to control, the more anxious you become when things don't go according to plan. It's a vicious cycle that keeps spinning faster and faster. Your heart races when the restaurant doesn't have your usual table. You feel physically sick when your teenager comes home 15 minutes late. Stress hormones flood your system every time something unexpected happens. Your body treats a changed meeting time the same way it would treat a charging bear. Fight or flight kicks in over the smallest disruptions. No wonder controlling people feel exhausted all the time. They're literally running from imaginary dangers every day. Let's not forget how childhood roles play out in adult life. Were you the responsible kid who took care of younger siblings while mom worked late? Did you become the family peacekeeper, always trying to prevent arguments? These early roles can create a lifelong pattern of believing you must manage everything and everyone to keep disaster at bay. Some people control because they secretly believe they're not good enough. If they can just organize everything perfectly, maybe others won't notice their flaws. If they can anticipate every problem, perhaps they'll finally earn love and approval. Control becomes a desperate attempt to prove worth through performance. The irony hits hard here. Controlling behavior usually creates the exact situations we're trying to avoid. Trying to prevent arguments often starts bigger fights. Micromanaging employees makes them more likely to quit. Monitoring your partner's every move pushes them away. We end up causing the very abandonment and chaos we feared in the first place. Control also offers a false sense of power when everything else feels overwhelming. Can't control the economy, organize every closet in your house, can't fix your marriage, create detailed schedules for your kids, can't stop aging, plan every moment of your day, down to the minute. These behaviors provide temporary relief from feeling helpless about bigger issues. Perfectionism often disguises itself as high standards, but reveals itself as fear of criticism. Better to spend 3 hours perfecting an email than risk someone thinking you're sloppy. Better to remake dinner twice than serve something that might disappoint guests. The fear of judgment drives endless revisions and second guessing. Social media makes everything worse by showing us highlight reels of other people's seemingly perfect lives. Everyone else appears to have their act together while your life feels messy and unpredictable. The pressure to present a flawless image online bleeds into offline behavior, creating even more need to control appearances and outcomes. Sometimes controlling behavior masks deeper depression. When internal emotions feel too painful or confusing to face, focusing on external details provides distraction. Rearranging furniture feels more manageable than processing grief. Planning elaborate birthday parties seems easier than admitting you feel lonely and disconnected. Childhood attachment styles matter too. Kids who learn that love comes with conditions often become adults who try to earn affection through perfect behavior and flawless execution. They believe relaxing their guard will lead to rejection or abandonment. Understanding why we crave control marks the first step toward freedom. But knowing the reasons doesn't immediately solve the problem. These patterns run deep, carved into our nervous systems through years of practice. The real question becomes what happens to our minds and bodies when we stay trapped in these controlling cycles. We just explored why people crave control, but here's what nobody tells you about the real cost. Your brain pays a heavy price for all that gripping and managing. The very thing you think protects you might be slowly destroying your peace of mind. Control creates a mental prison with invisible bars. When you constantly direct every outcome, your mind never gets a break. It's like keeping your car engine revving in the red zone all day. Eventually, something's going to blow. Your thoughts race faster. Sleep becomes harder. That nagging voice in your head gets louder and meaner. Research shows controlling people have higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone that's supposed to help you escape danger. Except there's no real danger to escape from. You've created a fake emergency in your own head. Your body doesn't know the difference between running from a bear and worrying about whether your friend liked your text message. Both trigger the same stress response. The anxiety spiral starts small. Maybe you check your email 15 times instead of 5. Then you start planning conversations 3 moves ahead, like you're playing chess with everyone you meet. Before long, you're lying awake at 3 in the morning, mentally rehearsing tomorrow's grocery store trip. Your brain becomes a hamster wheel that never stops spinning. Depression often follows close behind. When you try to control everything, you set impossible standards for yourself and others. Life becomes a series of disappointments when reality doesn't match your rigid expectations. The weather doesn't cooperate. People make their own choices. Traffic exists. Suddenly you feel like a failure because you couldn't bend the universe to your will. Controlling thoughts breed like rabbits in your mind. One worry leads to 10 more. You start catastrophizing, turning minor problems into major disasters. Your coworker didn't respond to your email. They must hate you. Your kid got a B instead of an A. Their entire future is ruined. The restaurant changed your order. The whole day is destroyed. Mental exhaustion hits harder than physical tiredness. At least when your body is tired, you can sit down and rest. When your mind is fried from constant control, there's nowhere to hide. Even relaxing becomes work because you're trying to control how well you relax. You might find yourself planning your spontaneous moments or scheduling your free time. Then there's the perfectionism trap. Controlling people often believe anything less than perfect equals failure. This black and white thinking crushes creativity and joy. You can't enjoy a messy art project or laugh at your mistakes. Everything becomes a test you might fail. Your inner critic becomes a drill sergeant who never takes a day off. The weird part is how control feeds on itself. The more you try to manage every detail, the more chaotic life feels. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. This creates more anxiety, which demands more control, which creates more problems. Social anxiety often spikes when you're focused on controlling others' reactions. You script conversations in advance, then panic when people go off your mental script. You analyze every facial expression and tone of voice, searching for signs of disapproval. Casual interactions become exhausting performances where you're both the actor and the harsh critic. Your memory can even start playing tricks on you. When you're constantly stressed about control, your brain has trouble forming clear memories. You might forget important details or remember things differently than they happened. This creates more anxiety because you can't trust your own recollections. Sleep problems multiply when your brain won't shut off the control center. You lie in bed making tomorrow's to-do list, replaying today's conversations and planning next week's meetings. Your mind treats bedtime like another problem to solve instead of a natural process to allow. Physical symptoms start showing up too, though we'll dig deeper into those later. Headaches become your constant companion. Your jaw aches from clenching. Stomach problems appear out of nowhere. Your body is trying to tell you something, but you're too busy controlling everything else to listen. The saddest part might be how control steals your ability to enjoy good moments. When something nice happens, you immediately start worrying about how to make it last or what could go wrong next. A beautiful sunset becomes a reminder that darkness is coming. A compliment triggers anxiety about maintaining that positive image. Recovery isn't about becoming careless or irresponsible. It's about learning the difference between influence and control. You can influence outcomes without demanding they happen exactly your way. But first, you need to understand how this mental pattern affects the people closest to you. Because while control is exhausting your mind, it's also quietly poisoning your most important relationships in ways you might not even realize. Asterisk. Asterisk. Chapter 4. Asterisk. Asterisk. Control doesn't just live inside your head, it spreads like wildfire through your relationships. When someone needs to dictate how every conversation goes, where you eat dinner, or even how you fold the laundry, you're dealing with relationship control. And here's the thing, most people don't realize, it usually starts small. Maybe your partner suggests you skip girls' night because they had a rough day. Seems caring, right? Then they mention your friend Sarah talks too much anyway. Before you know it, you're making excuses to Sarah about why you can't hang out. The controller didn't ban your friendship outright. That would be too obvious. Instead, they made it uncomfortable enough that you police yourself. Controlling partners have a toolkit that would make a master manipulator jealous. They use guilt like a Swiss Army knife, twisting it for every occasion. "I guess I'll just eat alone again," becomes their response when you want to grab lunch with co-workers. The message is clear: your independence equals their suffering. Well, that's emotional blackmail wrapped in a pity party. Then there's the punishment system. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies. Real relationship control is more subtle and therefore more devastating. They might give you the silent treatment for 3 days because you disagreed about which movie to watch. Or they'll suddenly become too busy to help with things they normally handle, leaving you scrambling to manage everything alone. The lesson: step out of line, and your life gets harder. But why does this work so well? Because most people want harmony in their relationships. When someone important to you acts hurt or angry, your natural instinct is to fix it. Controllers exploit this basic human decency. They've learned that emotional manipulation gets results faster than honest communication. The weird part is how it affects intimacy. You'd think someone who wants to control everything would create more closeness, but it does the opposite. When you're constantly walking on eggshells, you can't be yourself. Real intimacy requires vulnerability, and you can't be vulnerable with someone who might use your openness as ammunition later. Sarah starts hiding things from her controlling boyfriend Mike. Not big things at first, just little stuff like buying coffee on her way to work because he thinks it's wasteful. Soon she's lying about small purchases, conversations with friends, even her feelings. She tells herself she's keeping the peace, but really she's disappearing piece by piece. Here's what makes relationship control particularly damaging: it creates a power imbalance that feeds on itself. The more one person controls, the less confident the other becomes in their own judgment. Maybe Mike is right about my spending turns into maybe Mike knows what's best for me. Before long, the controlled person starts asking permission for things they should decide independently. Physical appearance often becomes a battleground too. Controllers might make comments about their partner's weight, clothing choices, or hairstyle disguised as helpful suggestions. They're not trying to make you look better, they're establishing ownership. When you change your appearance to please someone else, you're literally reshaping yourself to fit their vision. Friends and family usually spot controlling behavior before the person experiencing it does. That's because emotional distance gives them clearer vision. But here's the catch: when loved ones point out the problem, it often drives the controlled person deeper into isolation. The controller has already planted seeds of doubt about everyone else's motives. Money becomes another control mechanism. Some controllers insist on handling all finances, leaving their partner without access to bank accounts or credit cards. Others go the opposite route, refusing to contribute financially, but criticizing every purchase their partner makes. Either way, money becomes a leash, instead of a tool for building a life together. Communication dies a slow death in controlling relationships. Real conversation requires two people sharing thoughts freely and listening with respect. Controllers aren't interested in your thoughts. They want compliance. They interrupt, dismiss your feelings, or turn every discussion into a debate they must win. Eventually, many people just stop trying to communicate at all. Let's not forget the children caught in these dynamics. Kids absorb relationship patterns like sponges absorb water. When they see one parent controlling another, they learn that love looks like possession and care looks like surveillance. These lessons stick around long after childhood ends. The most heartbreaking part: many people in controlling relationships genuinely believe their partner's behavior comes from love. "He just worries about me," or "she knows what's best," become the explanations for increasingly restricted lives. But love doesn't demand you become smaller, so someone else can feel bigger. Recovery from relationship control isn't just about leaving. It's about remembering who you were before someone else's needs became more important than your own identity. The damage runs deeper than most people expect, affecting everything from decision-making confidence to basic self-trust. But what does this control actually look like day to day? The specific behaviors might surprise you, and recognizing them could change everything about how you see your relationships. We've talked about how control shows up in relationships and why people crave it so desperately. But what does controlling behavior actually look like in real life? The truth is, most people don't even realize they're doing it. Micromanaging sits at the top of the control pyramid. You know that person who checks your work every 5 minutes. They hover over your shoulder, asking for updates on tasks you started 20 minutes ago. These folks can't help themselves. They need to know every single detail about what you're doing, when you're doing it, and exactly how you plan to get it done. The weird part is, they genuinely believe they're being helpful. Meanwhile, everyone around them feels suffocated and starts hiding information just to breathe. Then there's financial control, which can destroy relationships faster than almost anything else. Some people insist on handling all the money decisions. They monitor every purchase, question every expense, and make others ask permission to buy basic necessities. This isn't about being financially responsible. It's about power. When someone controls the purse strings, they control the person. They might give their partner an allowance, or demand receipts for everything. The controlled person starts feeling like a child asking mommy for lunch money. Location control takes things to another creepy level. These controllers want to know where you are, every second of every day. They might track your phone, show up unexpectedly at places you mentioned visiting, or demand detailed explanations for any deviation from your usual routine. Where were you? Becomes their favorite question. They frame it as caring, but it's really about ownership. They treat people like property that might wander off if left unattended. But here's where it gets really twisted. Decision control. Controllers refuse to let others make choices, even tiny ones. What to wear, what to eat, which route to take home, which TV show to watch. Everything becomes their decision to make. They'll override your preferences with phrases like, "Trust me, this is better," or "You don't really want that." Over time, the controlled person stops even having opinions because what's the point? Social control might be the most isolating form. Controllers systematically cut people off from friends and family. They create drama with your loved ones, make social events impossible to attend, or simply forbid contact altogether. They might badmouth your friends constantly, until you start believing the negativity. Before you know it, the controller becomes your only social connection. Coincidence? Not even close. Let's not forget about truth control, also known as gaslighting. Controllers rewrite history to suit their narrative. They'll swear something never happened when you remember it clearly. Or they'll claim they said something completely different from what actually came out of their mouth. This messes with your head in ways that stick around long after the relationship ends. You start doubting your own memory and perception of reality. Communication control shows up as constant interrupting, dismissing your thoughts, or changing the subject whenever you try to express feelings. These people dominate every conversation. They talk over you, finish your sentences, or simply ignore what you're saying. Your voice literally gets erased from interactions. Schedule control means your time belongs to them. Every moment gets planned, monitored, and approved. Want to take a spontaneous drive? Forget it. Feel like sleeping in on Saturday? Not happening. Your entire calendar becomes their property. They create rigid routines that serve their need for predictability, not your need for flexibility. Information control rounds out this ugly picture. Controllers decide what you're allowed to know. They might read your mail, monitor your internet activity, or simply withhold important information. Knowledge equals power, and they're not sharing either one. They create information bubbles where only their approved facts get through. The really messed up thing about all these control tactics: they often start small and build gradually. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to accept complete domination. It happens slowly, one tiny compromise at a time. The frog doesn't jump out of the pot because the water heats up gradually. And the weird part is, many controllers don't see themselves as controlling at all. They view their behavior as protective, caring, or just being thorough. They've convinced themselves that their way really is the best way, and everyone else should be grateful for their guidance. Most people experience some combination of these control patterns rather than just one. A micromanaging boss might also control information flow and dominate all communication. A controlling partner might combine financial control with social isolation and truth manipulation. The behaviors feed off each other, creating an increasingly tight web. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward understanding their impact. But control doesn't just hurt relationships. It creates serious problems in professional environments too. Your boss peers over your shoulder for the 5th time today. They want to see every email before you send it. Every decision needs their approval. Even choosing which pen to use feels like it requires a committee meeting. Welcome to workplace control at its finest. And the weird part is, most controlling managers think they're being helpful. Micromanagement doesn't just happen in toxic companies. It creeps into good workplaces too. The manager who checks your work every 30 minutes. The supervisor who insists on being copied on every single email chain. The team leader who rewrites your reports because they know better. These behaviors might seem harmless, but they create a ripple effect that damages everything. Trust evaporates faster than coffee in the break room. When someone constantly watches over your shoulder, it sends a clear message: I don't believe you can handle this. Then there's the creativity killer. Control-heavy workplaces become idea graveyards. Why suggest improvements when every suggestion gets shot down? Why innovate when someone else will just change everything anyway? Employees learn to keep their heads down and follow orders. The company loses out on fresh perspectives and creative solutions. Let's not forget how control breeds fear. Workers start walking on eggshells, afraid to make any decision without permission. They second-guess themselves constantly. Should I answer this customer question or wait for approval? Can I order office supplies or do I need to ask first? Simple tasks become complicated approval processes. The really damaging part happens when mistakes occur. In controlling environments, people hide their errors instead of fixing them. Nobody wants to face the interrogation that follows every small slip-up. Problems get buried until they explode into bigger issues. A typo becomes a lost client. A missed deadline becomes a failed project. Communication suffers too. Meetings become one-way lectures instead of collaborative discussions. Team members stop sharing honest feedback because they know it won't be welcomed. The controlling manager talks while everyone else nods and takes notes. Real problems never surface because nobody feels safe bringing them up. Control also creates weird power dynamics. Some employees become favorites who get more freedom. Others find themselves under constant scrutiny for reasons they can't understand. Office politics replace actual work performance as the key to success. People spend more energy managing their boss than serving customers. But here's what makes workplace control especially brutal. Most people can't just walk away. They need their jobs. They have bills to pay and families to support. So they endure the daily grind of having every move monitored and every decision questioned. The controlling manager usually has their own story. Maybe they got burned by a past employee's mistake. Perhaps their own boss demands perfection, and they pass that pressure downward. Some learned this management style from previous workplaces where control was the norm. They genuinely believe that tight oversight prevents problems. What they don't realize is how much control actually costs the company. Talented employees leave for better opportunities. The ones who stay often do the bare minimum because initiative gets punished. Projects take longer because everything needs multiple approvals. Customer service suffers when staff can't make basic decisions without permission. Innovation dies completely. Companies with controlling cultures fall behind their competitors who embrace flexibility and employee empowerment. While control-focused businesses argue about expense reports, their rivals are launching new products and capturing market share. The stress levels in these environments reach ridiculous heights. People dread Monday mornings and spend Sunday nights feeling anxious about the week ahead. Sick days increase as employees need mental health breaks from the constant pressure. Turnover skyrockets, creating endless cycles of training new people who eventually leave too. Yet some managers double down on control when things go wrong. They think the solution to problems is more oversight, more rules, more approvals. They create elaborate systems to monitor productivity that actually make everyone less productive. It's like trying to fix a broken relationship by being more jealous and suspicious. The weird irony: most controlling managers started out wanting to help their teams succeed. Somewhere along the way, they confused support with surveillance. They began thinking that good management meant knowing every detail of every task. They forgot that their job is to remove obstacles, not create them. Workers in these environments often develop survival strategies. They learn exactly what their boss wants to hear. They master the art of looking busy even when waiting for approval to do actual work. Some become experts at predicting their manager's moods and adjusting their approach accordingly. These skills might help them cope, but they don't help the business succeed. The saddest part is watching talented people shrink under constant control. The creative designer who stops suggesting bold ideas. The experienced salesperson who waits for permission before following up with leads. The skilled technician who could solve problems faster but has to document every step for review first. All this workplace drama might seem like just a job problem, but it affects people's entire lives. The stress and frustration don't stay at the office. They follow employees home, affecting their families and personal relationships in ways that might surprise you. Your body keeps score, even when your mind doesn't realize it's happening. That tight grip you maintain on every situation. Your heart feels it first. Blood pressure creeps up as you micromanage your teenager's homework schedule or demand your spouse text you every hour during work trips. The cardiovascular system wasn't designed to handle constant vigilance. Makes sense, right? Then there's sleep, which becomes your enemy when control takes over. You lie awake at 2 a.m. mentally rehearsing tomorrow's conversations, planning responses to problems that haven't happened yet. Your brain refuses to shut down because letting go feels dangerous. Sleep requires surrender, and controlling people struggle with surrender more than most. The irony: poor sleep makes everything harder to manage the next day, creating a vicious cycle that feeds on itself. Headaches start showing up like unwelcome guests. Tension headaches, specifically, your jaw clenches during meetings when colleagues suggest different approaches. Your shoulders stay permanently raised, like you're bracing for impact. The muscles in your neck turn into concrete blocks. These aren't random aches, they're your body's way of saying it can't handle the constant state of alert you're forcing it into. But wait, there's more. Your digestive system joins the rebellion too. Stomach issues become routine when you're constantly stressed about outcomes you can't actually control. Acid reflux, nausea, that weird churning feeling when someone doesn't follow your carefully laid plans. The gut-brain connection is real, and when your mind is tied in knots about controlling everything, your stomach follows suit. Let's not forget about burnout, which isn't just feeling tired after a long week. Real burnout from chronic control feels like running a marathon while carrying a refrigerator. You're exhausted, but can't rest because resting means things might go wrong. The controlling person's dilemma: you need a break, but taking a break requires giving up control, which feels impossible. Well, here's where things get darker. Long-term health consequences stack up like unpaid bills. Chronic stress from trying to control everything weakens your immune system. You catch every cold that goes around the office. Minor cuts take longer to heal. Your body's repair mechanisms slow down because all available energy goes toward maintaining your death grip on daily life. And the weird part is how controlling behavior can push people toward addictive substances or behaviors. When reality refuses to cooperate with your plans, alcohol might seem like the perfect solution. A few drinks, and suddenly you don't care as much about your co-worker's wrong presentation style. Prescription medications for anxiety or sleep become crutches. Some people develop shopping addictions, exercise obsessions, or work addiction, anything that creates the illusion of control. Heart disease loves controllers. The Type A personality research from decades ago wasn't wrong. People who constantly try to force outcomes have higher rates of heart attacks and strokes. Your cardiovascular system pays the price for every argument about the right way to load the dishwasher, every sleepless night worrying about your adult child's career choices, every moment spent trying to choreograph other people's lives. Then there's the autoimmune connection that researchers are still untangling. Chronic stress from controlling behavior might trigger autoimmune responses in some people. Your body starts attacking itself, confused by the constant state of emergency you've created. Conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and inflammatory bowel disease show higher rates in people with chronic stress patterns. Weight gain creeps in through multiple pathways. Stress hormones like cortisol promote fat storage, especially around the midsection. Controlling people often eat irregularly because they're too busy managing everyone else's schedules. They grab fast food between micromanaging sessions, skip meals while obsessing over work projects, then overeat late at night when the day's control efforts finally collapse. All memory and cognitive function take hits too. When your brain dedicates enormous energy to monitoring and controlling your environment, less processing power remains for other tasks. You might forget appointments while remembering every detail of how your neighbor improperly trimmed their hedge. Concentration suffers because part of your mind stays alert for potential control opportunities or threats to your carefully maintained order. The respiratory system joins this unfortunate party as well. Shallow breathing becomes habitual when you're constantly tense. Deep, relaxing breaths require letting go, which controlling people avoid instinctively. This creates a feedback loop where poor breathing increases anxiety, which increases the need for control, which makes breathing even more shallow. Skin problems aren't uncommon either. Stress manifests as acne, eczema, or other inflammatory conditions. Your body's largest organ reflects the internal chaos created by trying to control external chaos. Some people develop nervous habits like skin picking or hair pulling, physical manifestations of the need to control something, anything, when bigger control efforts fail. But here's the thing about all these physical symptoms. They're not just random consequences, they're messages. Your body is essentially staging an intervention, trying to get your attention before the damage becomes irreversible. Understanding these health impacts becomes crucial when you realize how deeply controlling behavior affects every relationship in your life. You know what's really wild? The same parents who grew up feeling suffocated by their own controlling parents often become controlling parents themselves. It's like some twisted family tradition nobody asked for. Helicopter parenting has become the new normal. These parents hover over every homework assignment, plan every minute of their kids' schedule, and make decisions their children should be making themselves. They mean well, but they're accidentally creating anxious, dependent kids who can't handle real life. Take Sarah, a mom who checks her 14-year-old's backpack every single morning. She reorganizes it the right way, and double-checks that all assignments are perfect. Her daughter Emma has started having panic attacks about forgetting things at school. Emma literally can't pack her own bag anymore without feeling overwhelmed. But here's the thing nobody talks about. These controlling parents are often drowning in their own anxiety. They're not evil masterminds trying to ruin childhood. They're scared. Scared their kids will fail, get hurt, or face disappointment. The problem? They're so busy protecting their children from failure that they're setting them up for bigger failures later. The weird part is how this plays out in everyday situations. Controlling parents will choose their teenagers' classes, pick their friends, and even decide what extracurricular activities they should enjoy. They'll say things like, "Trust me, you don't really want to take art class. You're better at math." Translation: "I'm terrified you'll make choices I can't control." Then there's the money control. Some parents use allowances and privileges like weapons. If you don't get straight A's, no phone. If you choose that college major, I'm not paying tuition. They're teaching their kids that love comes with conditions, and that financial support equals emotional manipulation. Let's not forget the social control aspect. Controlling parents often screen their kids' text messages, demand passwords to social media accounts, and interrogate them about every friendship. They justify it as keeping them safe, but they're actually teaching their children that privacy doesn't exist, and that healthy boundaries are impossible. And the academic pressure, it's insane. These parents turn homework time into war zones. They'll redo science projects because they weren't good enough, write college essays for their kids, and even call teachers to argue about grades. The message is clear: you're not capable of handling this yourself. But here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Kids of controlling parents develop something psychologists call learned helplessness. They stop trying to solve problems because they know mom or dad will swoop in and fix everything. They become afraid of making mistakes because mistakes have always triggered parental panic and intervention. The long-term damage is brutal. These kids often struggle in college when suddenly nobody is telling them when to wake up, what to eat, or how to manage their time. They call their parents multiple times a day asking for help with basic decisions. Some actually drop out because the freedom feels too overwhelming. Then there's the relationship impact that emerges later. Children of controlling parents often become people pleasers who can't set boundaries, or they swing to the opposite extreme and become rebellious adults who reject all authority. Both responses mess up their romantic relationships and friendships. The irony hits hard when you realize that controlling parents usually produce the exact outcomes they were trying to prevent. They wanted confident, successful kids but instead created anxious, dependent adults. They wanted to protect their children from pain but ended up causing a different kind of suffering. What makes this even more complicated is that these parents often get positive feedback from other adults. Teachers might praise them for being involved. Other parents might comment on how well behaved their kids are. But compliance isn't the same as confidence, and obedience isn't the same as emotional health. Some controlling parents even use guilt as their primary tool. "After everything I've done for you," becomes their favorite phrase. They turn parenting into a debt their children can never fully repay. The kid learns that expressing independence equals hurting the person they love most. The most heartbreaking part: many of these children genuinely believe they're the problem. They think they're too weak, too irresponsible, or too stupid to handle basic life tasks. They don't realize their parents never gave them the chance to develop those skills. Recovery from controlling parenting takes years of therapy for many people. They have to learn how to trust their own judgment, make decisions without seeking approval, and believe they deserve autonomy. It's like learning to walk when you're already an adult. The generational cycle continues because many of these kids grow up thinking this is how parenting works. They either become controlling parents themselves or swing to the opposite extreme and provide no structure at all. Breaking this pattern requires serious self-awareness and often professional help. While parenting creates these deep psychological patterns, the damage doesn't stop there. Controlling behavior seeps into every relationship we have, starting with the friendships we build throughout our lives. Friends are supposed to make life better, not become another project to manage. Yet controlling people often treat friendships like they're running a small dictatorship. They want their friends to think the same thoughts, make the same choices, and somehow become carbon copies of themselves. Spoiler alert, that's not how real friendship works. When you demand that friends always agree with you, something weird happens. The friendship starts feeling fake. Your friends stop sharing their real opinions because they know you'll get upset or start an argument. Instead of honest conversations, you get people nodding along like bobbleheads. Sure, it might feel good in the moment to have everyone on your side, but you're basically surrounding yourself with yes people who are too tired to fight back. The controlling friend becomes the friend everyone dreads calling. You know the type. They have opinions about everything. Where the group should eat, what movie to watch, who else should be invited to hang out. They turn simple decisions into power struggles. Going out for pizza becomes a debate about restaurant choices, budgets and seating arrangements. What should be fun turns into work. Then there's the guilt trip method. Controlling friends love making others feel bad for having different preferences. I can't believe you'd rather go to Sarah's party than hang out with me, they'll say, adding just enough hurt to their voice to make you reconsider. They act like choosing anything other than their plan is a personal betrayal. Over time, friends start avoiding making plans altogether because it's easier than dealing with the drama. But here's where it gets really messy. Controlling behavior in friendships often disguises itself as caring. I'm just looking out for you, they say when they criticize your other friends, your dating choices, or your career decisions. They position themselves as the wise advisor who knows what's best for everyone. The problem is, constantly giving unsolicited advice isn't caring, it's controlling. Real friends trust you to make your own mistakes and learn from them. Friends begin to drift away, but not in the dramatic way you might expect. Most people don't confront controlling friends directly. Instead, they slowly fade out. They take longer to respond to texts. They become mysteriously busy when invitations come up. They start making plans that don't include the controlling person. It's death by 1,000 tiny rejections, and the controlling friend is often the last to understand why everyone seems distant. Trust breaks down in subtle ways too. When someone tries to control every group decision, friends stop sharing personal information. Why would you tell someone about your problems if you know they'll immediately start managing your life? Why mention your new relationship if you know they'll have strong opinions about whether this person is right for you? The controlling friend ends up being excluded from the real conversations that make friendships meaningful. The irony is brutal. The more you try to control your friends, the less control you actually have. People can't be managed like projects or possessions. They have their own thoughts, dreams, and desires that don't revolve around making you comfortable. When you try to force friendship into a shape that works for you, it stops being friendship at all. Social gatherings become tense when a controlling person is involved. Everyone walks on eggshells, careful not to suggest anything that might trigger a negative reaction. The fun gets sucked out of the room because instead of relaxing with friends, everyone's managing someone else's emotions. Group chats become strategic discussions about how to handle the controlling friend's reactions to plans. What's particularly sad is that controlling friends often have the best intentions. They genuinely want everyone to be happy and have a good time. They just can't accept that their version of a good time might not match everyone else's version. They mistake control for leadership and management for friendship. The weird part is that letting go of control actually makes friendships stronger. When you stop trying to direct every conversation and decision, your friends feel free to be themselves around you. Real personalities emerge. Authentic connections develop. People want to spend time with someone who accepts them as they are, not someone who's constantly trying to improve or change them. Friends stick around when they feel valued for who they are, not criticized for who they aren't. They share more, laugh more, and create the kind of memories that make friendship worthwhile. The controlling friend misses out on all of this, because they're too busy trying to orchestrate everything to actually enjoy the relationships they're working so hard to manage. As friendships crumble under the weight of too much control, the damage spreads beyond just social connections. The controlling person's self-worth becomes tied to whether others follow their lead, creating a cycle that's hard to break. The emotional roots run deeper than most people realize, and understanding where this need for control comes from is the key to changing everything. Ever wonder why some people need to control everything around them? The answer isn't what most people think. It's not about being bossy or wanting power. Control comes from deep emotional wounds that never properly healed. Fear sits at the root of almost every controlling behavior. Not the obvious kind of fear, like being scared of spiders or heights. This fear runs much deeper. It whispers that something terrible will happen if you don't manage every detail. Your mind creates stories about disasters that might occur if others make their own choices. The weird part is that this fear often has nothing to do with the present moment. When you dig deeper, you'll find that controlling people often feel completely powerless inside. Sounds backward, right? They appear strong and demanding on the outside, but inside they're terrified of being helpless. This powerlessness usually comes from childhood experiences, where they had no say in important matters. Maybe their parents divorced suddenly. Perhaps they moved constantly without warning. Or worse, they faced abuse or neglect with no way to protect themselves. These early experiences taught them a harsh lesson. The world is unpredictable and dangerous. Their young minds decided that the only way to stay safe was to control everything possible. Makes sense from a survival perspective, but it creates problems decades later. Then there's the approval trap. Many controlling people desperately want others to think highly of them. They believe that if they can manage how others behave, they can guarantee positive reactions. A controlling parent might think, if my child gets perfect grades and never misbehaves, everyone will see what a great parent I am. But this backfires spectacularly because forced behavior never looks genuine. Let's not forget how shame fuels controlling behavior. Deep down, many controllers believe they're fundamentally flawed or unworthy of love. They think that if people see the real them, they'll be rejected. So they try to control how others perceive them by managing every interaction. They script conversations in their heads. They plan social events down to the last detail. They even try to control their own emotions, which is like trying to stop the tide with your bare hands. Anxiety plays a massive role too. When your nervous system is constantly activated, your brain starts seeing threats everywhere. That presentation your colleague is giving, your anxious mind decides they'll mess it up and make the whole team look bad, so you need to review every slide. Your teenager wants to go to a party. Anxiety screams about all the terrible things that could happen, so you create 20 rules to follow. But why do these emotional patterns stick around for so long? Because they worked once upon a time. That's the tricky thing about survival strategies learned in childhood. They might have been necessary then, but they become prison walls later. A child who learned to manage their alcoholic parents' mood swings by being perfect might carry that same behavior into their marriage 30 years later. Trauma leaves invisible scars that drive controlling behavior. When someone experiences betrayal, abandonment or violence, their brain rewires itself to prevent future harm. The control becomes a shield, even though it often pushes away the very people they want to keep close. Trauma survivors often feel like they're walking through life with no skin, vulnerable to every slight breeze. Control feels like armor. And the weird part is that most controllers don't even realize what they're doing. They think they're being helpful, responsible, or caring. A micromanaging boss believes they're ensuring quality work. A controlling spouse thinks they're protecting their family. Parents who plan every minute of their child's life believe they're giving them the best opportunities. The need for approval runs so deep that it becomes automatic. These patterns get reinforced every time controlling behavior seems to work. When your micromanaging prevents a mistake, your brain files that away as proof that control is necessary. When your detailed planning makes an event successful, it feels like validation. But you never get to see what would have happened if you'd let go. What makes this even more complex is that controllers often attract people who struggle with decision-making or self-confidence. It can look like a perfect match at first. One person wants to control everything, and the other person feels relieved not to make choices. But this dynamic eventually becomes toxic for both people. Understanding these emotional roots doesn't excuse controlling behavior, but it explains why it's so hard to change. These patterns formed during our most vulnerable years when our brains were still developing. They feel as natural as breathing. Breaking them requires more than willpower or good intentions. The good news, once you understand where your controlling tendencies come from, you can start addressing the real issues underneath. Instead of just trying to control less, you can heal the fears and wounds that created the need for control in the first place. But how do you actually break these deeply ingrained patterns? You know what's funny? Most people can spot a controlling person from a mile away. They roll their eyes at the micromanaging boss or the friend who plans every detail of group hangouts. but ask them to look in the mirror. Suddenly things get blurry. Breaking free from controlling habits starts with one uncomfortable truth: admitting you might be the problem. The first step feels brutal, because it forces you to notice patterns you've been blind to for years. Maybe it's realizing you interrupt people mid-sentence to correct their stories, or catching yourself rearranging items after someone else cleaned up. These moments sting. Your brain wants to justify every action, whisper excuses about why your way really is better. Start small and pay attention to your body. Controlling urges often show up physically first. Your jaw tightens when someone takes longer than expected. Your hands clench when plans change. Your chest feels tight watching others make what you think are mistakes. These physical signals arrive before the controlling behavior kicks in, giving you a tiny window to make different choices. Then comes the real challenge: letting others make decisions, not life or death choices at first, but small everyday ones that make you squirm. Let your partner pick the restaurant without suggesting 3 alternatives. Allow your coworker to handle the project their way, even if you do it differently. Watch your teenager choose their own clothes without commentary. Well, this feels terrible at first. Your brain screams warnings about all the things that could go wrong. The restaurant might have bad food, the project might be late, your teenager might look ridiculous. But here's what nobody tells you about letting go. Most of the disasters you imagine never happen, and when they do, people handle them just fine without you swooping in to fix everything. Building trust requires baby steps, not giant leaps. You can't go from controlling every detail to complete hands-off overnight. Your nervous system would revolt. Instead, practice what psychologists call graduated exposure. Start with low-stakes situations where the worst outcome is mild inconvenience. Let someone else navigate to a familiar destination. Allow a friend to choose the movie. Give up control of the TV remote for one evening. Each small success builds evidence against your brain's control-obsessed predictions. The world doesn't collapse when you're not directing every moment. People don't automatically make terrible choices. Life continues, sometimes even improves, without your constant management. Let's not forget the power of taking calculated risks. Controlling people often mistake any uncertainty for danger, but risk and recklessness are completely different things. Smart risk-taking means stepping back and letting competent people handle their own responsibilities. It means trusting your friend to show up on time without 3 reminder texts. It means believing your employee can complete tasks without hourly check-ins. The weird part is how much energy controlling behavior actually drains from you. Once you stop micromanaging everyone and everything, you discover mental space you forgot existed. Suddenly you're not mentally rehearsing conversations 3 times before having them. You're not lying awake replaying all the ways other people messed up your perfect plans. But breaking controlling habits requires feedback, and this is where things get interesting. Ask people you trust to point out your controlling moments. Yeah, this sounds about as fun as a root canal. Your pride will take some hits. Friends might mention times you steamrolled their preferences or dismissed their ideas. Family members might reveal how your helpful suggestions felt more like commands. Don't defend or explain during these conversations. Just listen. Thank them for the honesty. Use their observations to spot blind spots in your behavior. Most controlling people genuinely believe they're being helpful, so outside perspective becomes crucial for real change. The process gets easier with practice, though it never becomes completely comfortable. Growth happens in the discomfort zone, not the safety of familiar routines. Each time you resist the urge to take over, you strengthen different mental muscles. Instead of control muscles that squeeze and restrict, you develop trust muscles that allow and support. Here's something that might surprise you. Breaking controlling patterns actually gives you more influence, not less. When people stop feeling managed and manipulated, they naturally want to include you in decisions. They seek your input because they choose to, not because you forced it. Your opinions carry more weight when people aren't expecting you to bulldoze their preferences, and the relationships that survive this transition, they become stronger than you imagined possible. Turns out people prefer being trusted partners rather than managed employees in their personal relationships. The journey away from control creates space for something most controlling people have forgotten exists: spontaneous joy. When you're not busy orchestrating every moment, you become available for unexpected pleasures and genuine connections. What happens when you finally master the art of letting go? The transformation touches every corner of your life in ways that might shock you. When you finally stop gripping life so tightly, something amazing happens. Your shoulders drop, your jaw unclenches. That knot in your stomach starts to disappear. Stress levels don't just improve, they plummet faster than you'd expect. Most people think letting go means losing everything important. Wrong. You actually gain more than you lose, and the benefits show up quicker than anyone imagines. Within days of loosening your grip, your body starts responding like it just got out of prison. Your relationships transform first. Remember how controlling behavior pushes people away? Well, the opposite happens when you step back. Friends start opening up again. They share things they've been holding back for months or even years. Your partner stops walking on eggshells and begins acting like themselves around you. The weird part is how honest everyone becomes. When people don't feel controlled, they tell you the truth. They share their real thoughts, their actual feelings, their genuine concerns. Sure, some of these truths might sting at first, but wouldn't you rather know where you really stand with someone than live in a fantasy? Children respond especially fast to this change. Kids who seemed anxious or rebellious suddenly become more cooperative. Not because they're scared, but because they feel trusted. They start making better decisions on their own, when you're not breathing down their necks every second. Then there's the creativity explosion that catches everyone off guard. When you stop micromanaging every detail of your life and others, space opens up for new ideas. Solutions you never considered start appearing. Opportunities that were invisible before suddenly become obvious. Your career benefits in unexpected ways too. Colleagues who used to avoid working with you start volunteering for your projects. Your boss notices how much smoother things run when you're involved. Team meetings become more productive because people aren't afraid to speak up anymore. But here's what nobody talks about. You discover your own strength. All that energy you spent controlling everything, it was actually covering up a deep fear that you couldn't handle whatever might happen. When you stop controlling and things still work out, you realize something powerful about yourself. You're way more resilient than you thought. Problems still show up, obviously. Life doesn't suddenly become perfect just because you're not trying to control everything. But your response changes completely. Instead of panicking and trying to force solutions, you find yourself calmly figuring things out. Sometimes you even surprise yourself with how well you handle challenges. Sleep improves dramatically. Makes sense, right? Your brain isn't staying up all night planning every possible scenario and trying to prevent every potential problem. Instead of lying awake thinking about how to make everyone do what you want, you actually rest. Your physical health gets a boost too. Those tension headaches become less frequent. Your stomach stops churning constantly. Some people even notice their blood pressure dropping during routine checkups. Doctors have been saying for years that stress kills, but you don't realize how much stress-controlling behavior creates until you stop doing it. Freedom enters your life in ways you didn't expect. When you're not busy managing everyone else's choices, you have time to focus on your own interests. Hobbies you abandoned years ago suddenly seem appealing again. You remember what you actually enjoy doing instead of what you think you should be doing. Your sense of humor comes back. Controlling people tend to be pretty serious all the time because everything feels so important and urgent. When you let go, you start laughing again. Things that used to feel like major crises become minor inconveniences or even funny stories later. Well, the most surprising benefit might be how much you start enjoying other people's successes. When you're not trying to control outcomes, you can genuinely celebrate when others do well, even when they do things differently than you would have done them. Their wins don't threaten you anymore. Money stress often decreases too, not because you suddenly have more money, but because you're not spending energy fighting about every financial decision. You and your partner can actually discuss money without it turning into a power struggle about who gets to decide everything. Adventures become possible again. When you need to control every detail, you avoid new experiences because they're too unpredictable. But when you let go, trying new restaurants, visiting new places, or meeting new people stops feeling so scary. Life gets more interesting. The best part, happiness increases naturally. Not the fake happiness you get from forcing things to go your way temporarily, but genuine contentment that comes from accepting life as it actually is rather than demanding it match your expectations. Of course, learning to recognize these benefits in real life takes some practice. You need to see how letting go actually works for real people in real situations. Which brings us to something fascinating. Sarah used to plan every single detail of her family vacations. She'd map out each restaurant, schedule bathroom breaks, and even dictate which souvenirs her kids could buy. Her husband would joke that their trips felt more like military operations than family fun, but here's what changed everything for her. During one particularly rigid beach vacation, her youngest daughter started crying because she wanted to build sandcastles instead of visiting the planned lighthouse tour. Sarah snapped at her, insisting they stick to the schedule. That's when her husband quietly said, "Look around. Everyone's miserable, except the family's just playing in the sand." Sarah stopped controlling their vacations that day. The result? Her family still talks about their chaos trips as the best memories they ever made together. Her stress levels dropped so much that she actually started enjoying herself instead of frantically managing everyone else's fun. Then there's Marcus, a software manager who used to review every single line of code his team wrote. He'd stay late fixing their mistakes and send detailed emails about proper formatting at midnight. His team nicknamed him the Code Vampire because he sucked the life out of every project. Everything shifted when his best programmer quit, and specifically mentioned Marcus's micromanaging in the exit interview. Marcus realized he wasn't helping his team grow, he was stunting their development while burning himself out. The weird part is what happened when he stepped back. His team started producing better work almost immediately. They began collaborating more, catching their own errors, and even suggesting innovative solutions Marcus never would have thought of. The project that had been dragging for months suddenly accelerated. Marcus discovered that his need to control wasn't making things better. It was the main thing holding everyone back. Let's not forget Jennifer, who used to orchestrate every social gathering like she was directing a Broadway show. She'd assign specific dishes to friends for potlucks, rearrange furniture when people sat wrong, and get genuinely upset if conversations didn't flow the way she envisioned. Her breaking point came during a birthday party she'd planned for weeks. A friend brought the wrong dessert, another showed up 2 hours late, and someone spilled wine on her carefully arranged decorations. Jennifer spent the entire evening stressed and angry, while her guests had an amazing time laughing and connecting naturally. That night, she realized she'd been so busy controlling the experience that she'd forgotten to actually experience it herself. Her friends were having fun despite her rigid planning, not because of it. When Jennifer started hosting more relaxed gatherings, something beautiful happened. People began opening up more, staying longer, and her home became the place everyone wanted to be. But why do these stories matter so much? Because they show what's possible when you stop gripping so tightly. Take David, a father who used to hover over his teenage son's homework every night. He'd check each assignment, correct grammar mistakes, and practically rewrite essays to meet his standards. His son's grades were good, but their relationship was falling apart. The kid couldn't make a decision without looking to his father for approval first. David's wake-up call came when his son got accepted to college, but called home 3 times on the first day asking what classes to take and which dining hall to choose. David realized he'd raised someone who couldn't function independently. That's when he made the hardest decision of his parenting life. He stepped back completely. The first semester was rough. His son made mistakes, chose some wrong classes, and struggled with time management. David's hands were practically bleeding from biting his nails so much. But something incredible happened by spring semester. His son started figuring things out, making friends who helped him study, and developing genuine confidence in his choices. Their relationship transformed too. Instead of their conversations revolving around David's corrections and suggestions, they started talking about ideas, dreams, and experiences. His son began calling home because he wanted to, not because he needed rescue. And the weird part is how these changes rippled outward. Sarah's marriage got stronger when she stopped trying to control every interaction with her husband. Marcus got promoted because his team's improved performance reflected well on his leadership style. Jennifer's friendships deepened when she created space for authentic connection instead of perfect presentation. These aren't isolated success stories either. Research backs up what these people experienced firsthand. Letting go of excessive control consistently leads to better outcomes across relationships, work performance, and personal well-being. The pattern emerges clearly when you look at enough real cases. People who release their death grip on controlling others don't just feel better themselves, they create environments where everyone around them can thrive, grow, and contribute their best efforts naturally. What makes these transformations even more powerful is understanding the science behind why letting go works so effectively in the first place. Scientists love studying things that seem backwards, like how doing less can actually give you more. The research on letting go reveals something most people would never expect. The less you try to control everything, the better your life becomes. Not just a little better, way better. Dr. Susan David from Harvard spent years tracking people who practiced acceptance versus those who constantly fought against uncertainty. The acceptance group showed 40% lower anxiety levels within just 3 months. But here's the kicker. They also performed better at work, had stronger relationships, and reported feeling more confident about handling whatever life threw at them. Makes sense, right? Then there's the fascinating work coming out of Stanford's psychology department. Researchers discovered that people who regularly practice letting go actually rewire their brains. The amygdala, that alarm system in your head that screams danger at every unexpected moment, starts to calm down. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex gets stronger. That's your thinking brain, the part that helps you solve problems instead of panicking about them. The flexibility research gets even weirder. When scientists put people through problem-solving tests, the ones who had been practicing acceptance consistently outperformed the control group, not by a small margin either. We're talking about a 60% improvement in creative solutions. Why? Because when you're not busy trying to force one specific outcome, your mind stays open to possibilities you never would have considered. Let's not forget what happens to your stress hormones. Cortisol, that nasty chemical your body pumps out when you're trying to control everything, starts dropping within weeks of letting go. Lower cortisol means better sleep, clearer thinking, and way less inflammation in your body. Some participants in long-term studies showed cortisol levels that looked more like someone 10 years younger. But the relationship research might be the most compelling part. UCLA's relationship lab followed couples for 5 years. The pairs where both partners practiced acceptance had divorce rates 75% lower than average. They also reported higher satisfaction, better communication, and more frequent expressions of love and gratitude. The controlling couples, well, you can probably guess how that turned out. And the weird part is how letting go affects your immune system. People who stopped trying to micromanage every aspect of their lives showed stronger immune responses to everything from common colds to more serious illnesses. Their bodies literally got better at protecting them when they stopped exhausting themselves with control. The longevity studies blow everything else out of the water though. Researchers in Japan tracked over 10,000 people for 20 years. Those who scored highest on acceptance and flexibility measures lived an average of 7 years longer than the high control group. 7 years. That's not just correlation either. The data controlled for diet, exercise, genetics, and income levels. Career advancement research tells a similar story. Managers who learned to delegate and trust their teams saw promotion rates increase by 50% compared to micromanagers. Employees under flexible leadership reported 80% higher job satisfaction and were 3 times more likely to bring innovative ideas forward. Companies with less controlling cultures consistently outperformed rigid competitors in both profits and employee retention. The anxiety disorder research provides some of the clearest evidence. Cognitive behavioral therapy that focuses on acceptance rather than control shows success rates nearly double those of traditional approaches. Patients learn that fighting their anxious thoughts actually makes them stronger, while accepting and observing them causes them to fade naturally. Counterintuitive but incredibly effective. Mental health professionals now recommend acceptance-based practices for everything from depression to PTSD. The reason is simple: trying to control your internal emotional state often backfires spectacularly. But when people learn to observe their feelings without judgment and let them pass naturally, recovery rates improve dramatically. Sleep researchers found something fascinating too. People who practice letting go fall asleep 40% faster and experience deeper, more restorative sleep. Their minds aren't spinning with tomorrow's to-do lists or replaying today's conversations, searching for things they should have controlled differently. The really surprising discovery involves decision-making ability. You'd think letting go would make people indecisive, right? Wrong. Studies show that people who practice acceptance make decisions 30% faster and report higher satisfaction with their choices 6 months later. They're not second-guessing themselves constantly or trying to predict every possible outcome. Even financial well-being improves when people stop trying to control every economic variable. Investors who practice acceptance-based strategies show better long-term returns because they're not constantly buying and selling based on fear or trying to time markets perfectly. The science is crystal clear. Letting go isn't about giving up or becoming passive. It's about channeling your energy toward what actually works instead of exhausting yourself fighting against reality. The research shows the path forward, but knowing the facts and living them are 2 very different things. Building a life without control requires specific daily practices that most people have never tried. Living without control means embracing one simple truth: life is messy, unpredictable, and absolutely perfect that way. Well, Maybe not perfect in the Instagram sense, but perfect in the way that teaches you to grow stronger. The moment you stop fighting reality, something magical happens. You discover that uncertainty isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. Accept unpredictability as your new normal. Weather changes without asking permission. Traffic jams appear out of nowhere. People cancel plans. Your favorite restaurant runs out of your usual order. And the weird part is, none of this actually ruins your day unless you decide it does. When you stop expecting life to follow your script, every surprise becomes an adventure instead of a crisis. Focus on what you can truly change, because here's the reality check: that list is shorter than you think. You can change your attitude, your effort, your response to situations, your words, your actions. That's about it. Everything else? Not your department. Makes sense, right? Yet most people spend 80% of their energy trying to control the 20% that's completely out of their hands. But why do we keep making this mistake? Because focusing on what we can control feels less powerful at first. Changing yourself requires actual work. Trying to change everyone else just requires complaining and demanding. Guess which one people pick? Practice gratitude for each moment, even the messy ones. Especially the messy ones. That delayed flight might lead to an interesting conversation with a stranger. The cancelled date gives you time to read that book you've been ignoring. Your kid's temper tantrum teaches you patience you didn't know you had. Gratitude isn't about pretending everything is wonderful. It's about finding the gift hidden inside the chaos. Learn mindful breathing to stay calm when your control instincts kick in. Here's a technique that works. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, breathe out for 6. The longer exhale tells your nervous system to chill out. Your brain thinks, oh, we're not being chased by a tiger anymore. Cool. This simple trick can stop you from turning a small problem into a relationship-ending argument. Then there's the power of choosing growth over control. Every time you let someone else drive the route they prefer, you learn something new about your city. When you let your coworker handle the presentation their way, you might discover a better approach. Letting go doesn't mean being passive. It means being curious instead of controlling. Connection becomes deeper when control disappears. People can finally be themselves around you. They stop walking on eggshells. Real conversations happen. Laughter comes easier. Trust grows naturally. The friends who seemed distant start opening up again. Your family dinners become actually enjoyable instead of tense negotiations. Let's not forget that building this new life takes practice. You won't transform overnight from a control enthusiast to a Zen master. Some days you'll catch yourself micromanaging again. That's normal. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Each time you notice and choose differently, you're rewiring your brain. Start small with your letting go practice. Let someone else pick the movie tonight. Don't give directions when your partner is driving. Allow your teenager to make their own mistake with that questionable outfit choice. These tiny moments build your tolerance for uncertainty. And here's something interesting. People who live with less control often become natural leaders. Why? Because others trust them more. When you're not constantly trying to manipulate outcomes, people feel safe around you. They know you're not going to throw them under the bus when things go wrong. The business world is catching on too. Companies with flexible cultures outperform rigid ones. Teams that can adapt quickly beat teams stuck in old patterns. Innovation happens when people feel free to experiment without someone breathing down their necks. Your health improves dramatically when you stop fighting reality. Stress hormones drop, sleep comes easier, headaches disappear, your immune system gets stronger. Turns out, accepting life as it is might be the best medicine you never knew you needed. This journey toward less control reveals something beautiful about human nature. We're incredibly resilient when we stop getting in our own way. You can handle way more uncertainty than you think. You're stronger than your need to control everything. Most importantly, life becomes an adventure instead of a battle when you finally put down your weapons. Choose growth and connection over control, and watch how your world transforms. The people around you will thank you. Your stress levels will drop. New opportunities will appear. You'll sleep better, laugh more, and actually enjoy the wild, unpredictable ride that is your one precious life. Freedom isn't getting everything you want. It's wanting what you already have and staying curious about what comes next.